in recent weeks, of course, Barcelona already signed Joan Garcia.
Yeah.
And there's potentially rumors. There's rumors that potentially Nico Williams is going to be Barcelona's next signing.
Yeah.
So let's start the video with talking about Joan Garcia. I want to ask you, what do you think about that signing? What are your thoughts of that? And do you think he fits in Barcelona?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah. So like I told you, I actually didn't see him play, in La Liga very much. The only time that I saw him play was when obviously he played against Barca, and then also when he stood out when he played against Real Madrid.
Right.
He kept a clean sheet. I believe that game ended 0-0, and it was thanks to him. And then also they've been saying that thanks to him, Espanyol didn't get regulated.
Yeah, I heard about that
Yeah.
too. You're right.
So they're saying that he was the best goalkeeper for Spain in La Liga, and he's young. He's what you said, 22.
I think he's
24?
between 22 to 24 years old, to be honest.
So he's young. So in goalkeeper years, that's young.
That's
bro.
really great in my opinion.
So if he fits in a Barca system, because for goalkeepers to play at Barca, they're gonna be the sweeper keepers, right? Where they call them, where they have to kind of.
It's not easy to play as a
Yeah.
goalkeeper in Barcelona, bro. You gotta be really good with the feet.
Yeah.
Everything, all around goalkeeper.
You gotta be really good with the feet, come out from the back, be able to pass it to the defenders, or be able to make it through pass to the middle, right? And then also, you need to be able to come out and go for the ball when there's a high ball coming in or whatnot. So it's not gonna be easy. He needs to adapt. But one thing that he has is that he's already playing in La Liga, which is good, right? He's coming from he's already in La Liga. He's established there.
Hey, but quick, I was gonna tell you, it's kind of crazy how that, because Espanyol, they hate Barcelona, bro.
Yeah.
So I wonder how the fans are going to feel about that.
But that makes it sweeter, bro. That makes it better because you take a player from your opponent, from one of your direct rivals. So hey, that's good,
And you know that
they're gonna boo him, bro.
of course they are.
When he returns to Espanyol's stadium, they're gonna boo him.
And you know that Espanyol didn't want to negotiate with Barcelona. They said, if you guys really want Joan Garcia, you guys have to pay the release clause. We're not going to negotiate.
Which real quickly.
Barcelona goes, okay, here you go, bam.
yes, and then real quickly, that's another thing. Just to point it out, that's another thing that's gonna happen with Atletico Bilbao with Nico Williams.
I agree. Yeah.
Well, Atletico Bilbao, they don't want to negotiate with Barca, so Barca are gonna have to pay most likely they're gonna have to pay their release cost, which is like 58 or 62, I forget.
Look, bro.
So
just real quick, what I was gonna tell you was, I've always said this, right, dude. Every player, right, when they get to a professional level, right, they can play for the Man United clubs, they can play for Liverpool's, the top teams, right, Bayern Munich, Inter Milan, AC Milan, just to name a few. But every player, bro, dreams about potentially playing for, and not every player, because there's obviously some that
academy players that
some that don't. Like, for example, one that comes to my mind is Totti. Mm-hmm. He stayed at Roma, and Madrid kept calling for him, but he said no.
Mm-hmm.
But what I'm trying to say is that majority of the players, they always dream of playing for either Barcelona or Real Madrid. And I've said it like this, right? There are a few players that would choose Barcelona over Real Madrid, and there are a few players that would choose Real Madrid over Barcelona. But when they come calling the first, like let's say Real Madrid comes calling a player at Bayern Munich, they're gonna want to go there. Or let's say that Barcelona goes calling, the first ones to go calling, they're gonna want to go there. I don't know why clubs make it seem like, oh my God, you're betraying us.
Yeah,
Gotta be realistic, dude.
Yeah, it's especially because if I'm not mistaken, Joan Garcia's salary at Espanyol was like 300K a year.
A year?
Yeah, bro, which is
year?
pretty. Yeah.
That's doctor money, huh?
Yeah, but that's low.
Of course, for a professional football player.
For
Yeah.
a professional footballer, that's low. So it was like 300K euros a season, a year.
So he could potentially make like 60 a week.
So at Barca, he's making 3 million a year now.
Oh, come on. Yeah.
So of course, he's gonna 10x his salary, and he's gonna be able to play for a bigger club. So
and in my opinion,
that's a no-brainer.
And I also think that it helps Joan Garcia because I guarantee you that he's gonna be called up for Spain now. And let's not forget that 2026 World Cup is coming up. Mm-hmm. So depending on how he does for Barcelona, and this is everything that goes, in my opinion, into a pro player's mind. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm going to 10 times my salary. I'm going to play for a bigger club, and I'm going to potentially have a chance to now really be called up for the World Cup.
Yep. To actually even start the World Cup.
Yeah.
Who knows? Depending on how he does for Barca, he can even be the starter for the World Cup for Spain next year. So Yeah, it's a no-brainer. Even though, like I said, most likely the fans are gonna boo him. They probably are. Most likely they are. But hey, who cares? Like, I mean, for us, it just makes it sweeter.
Imagine he goes and he's playing, and then he's playing in Español Stadium and he kisses Barcelona's badge. And he shuts them up, bro. Damn, imagine that would be crazy.
That's what Courtois did, bro. To Atletico Madrid.
I know. That's why they hate him, Courtois, bro. They dislike Courtois so much.
Courtois did that.
Even the president of Atletico Madrid said Courtois needs to learn how to shut his mouth and just play. But it's true though, and that I agree too, bro. Because I feel like sometimes you can forget who gave you the opportunity and who where you came from. And a lot of players, they become very arrogant, and it's just like everything in life, bro. You shouldn't close the doors, or you shouldn't burn a bridge. You just never know.
Well,
look what happened to Griezmann.
Yeah, he had to go back.
He had to go back.
And Courtois might end up having to go back too. So
you never know.
You never know.
It's football, bro.
And he's gonna come back with his tail between his legs, back to Atletico Madrid after he was kissing the Real Madrid's badge in front of the fans. Yeah, so you don't do things like that either.
So what I also was gonna ask you is, so me and you both agree that he will potentially fit well at Barcelona.
It seems like it, It seems based on, the reports. Like I said, I haven't seen him play, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm not going to go sit here and say, oh, I've seen Joan Garcia play. Because, honestly, like you, I've seen him play against Barcelona, both games. And I saw, the highlights for when he played against Real Madrid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I did hear and I saw the highlights when he helped Espanyol not get regulated from La Liga.
Yeah. He was the reason why they didn't get regulated, because he kept them with many clean sheets. And he did some pretty amazing... I saw some highlights, and he's done some pretty amazing blocks. But see, the thing about it is that, like we said, to be the goalkeeper of Barca is not just about blocking.
No.
It's also about how you come out from the back, playing with your feet, being a sweeper keeper. So let's see how he does. I think he'll do good, because he's young, and he's already played in La Liga, so it's not going to be a whole different, new environment for him.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Now that you say that, not being a whole new environment, I think that's the reason why, bro, that let's end the Joan Garcia debate here, whatever. I think he's gonna fit well up.
Let's hope so.
I think he fits well. So. I think it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Financially, young, he has experience from La Liga, he's Spanish, whatever.
But what were we gonna say? Because I was gonna say something about Ter Stegen.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Real quick with Ter Stegen, let's kind of hope that Ter Stegen decides to leave, because there's also reports that
he's not going to leave.
That supposedly he doesn't want to leave, but the thing about it is that if he doesn't leave, then like what are Barca really gonna do? Because right now they have 4 goalkeepers, right?
Right.
So they have Joan Garcia, which is the new one. They have Ter Stegen, they have Dirk, and then they also have Iñaki Peña, who's still there.
I think Iñaki Peña for sure is gonna be the first one to leave.
Okay.
There's Tech. He got renewed for a year.
Yeah, for one. So he's staying there for sure.
So I think that this is where it becomes
tricky.
And I think also it becomes a problem from the board, in my opinion, the way they do things. Because if you knew that you were trying to go for Joan Garcia, would you renew this Tech?
It's because I think by renewing Dirk, I think Barca were basically telling Ter Stegen that they weren't counting on him anymore. And I think that's kind of the message that they've been trying to send to him. And if I'm not mistaken, too, I think Hansi Flick has told Ter Stegen that he doesn't count on him for next season.
Let's dive deeper into that. I don't know if you heard, but I think it was the last game of La Liga, right?
I know what you're gonna talk about.
Right, Barcelona had won and whatever, and they were celebrating, and then I think that all the players went to the fans to kind of like thank them, and Ter Stegen just went to the...
Yeah, he threw a fit because he didn't play that game.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw that video. It was at the end. I think we were both watching the game, whatever, and it was Laporta and Hansi Flick. They were on the pitch, and they were kind of like arguing, but they actually were angry at Ter Stegen for just leaving.
Yeah, they were kind of surprised. They were both looking at Ter Stegen, just kind of, he left, and then he went into the tunnel. But see, that's the thing, like, at the end of the day, bro, like, players like that, they're already kind of at the end of their career, you want to say, because how old is Ter Stegen? He's like 33, 34, right?
33, 34, yeah.
So he's not that young anymore. And he's been there for 10 years. And honestly, 10 years at a club, bro, that's a long time.
I agree with you.
So, it's not I don't think Barca have been treating him bad. I don't think Barca have been treating him bad because, Ter Stegen, not only is he on high wages, because he is on high wages at Barcelona, but, they never gave Ter Stegen any competition. They never threw a goalkeeper at him
No.
to compete against them. They basically secured a spot.
It was always like a backup just in case you get injured. Then we're gonna give you. But
Yeah,
it was never like Claudio Bravo.
Yeah, it was. It
competition.
was never like a for sure like a starter that you wanted to get a goalkeeper as your starter, and ever since Claudio Bravo left, where he's the one that demanded Barcelona to either get rid of Claudio Bravo
I
or
was
he
gonna
was going
tell
to
you
the City.
that. I was gonna tell you that.
So, ever since then, bro, like Ter Stegen has had his spot. So, now all of a sudden you want to throw a fit, it's like you can't be at the club forever. And then on top of that, yeah, he's done some pretty good saves. I don't think he's
Yeah, I don't think he's
been
either,
horrible, but there's also been some times where a lot of goals you can kind of point out. You can point towards him where he's been kind of slacking off. So I mean, like I said, bro, nothing lasts forever. He's been there for 10 years. For him to throw a fit like that, in my opinion, you kind of want to get rid of those kind of players, bro, because
They disrupt the locker room.
It disrupts the whole, the locker room.
Yeah.
The other players. So yeah, that's what they were talking about. So yeah, I understand why Laporta was pissed. And Hansi Flick too, to be honest.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Ter Stegen, I think, needs to kind of realize that he's getting older. Of course, his tenure at Barcelona is pretty much coming to an end, and I also think, right, that he needs to realize that you're playing for a high club, so the club is always gonna go ahead and try to sign a younger goalkeeper, a younger striker, a younger middle, whatever. Every player, in my opinion, goes through that. Ronaldo went through that. Benzema went through that. Messi went through that. Iniesta, Xavi, Modric, Casemiro, all those great players that have played the game before even this era, they all went through the same thing. You get me? So I think that sometimes Ter Stegen, yeah, he needs to kind of like, let's just say knock it off. But whatever, I think we can close that part of Joan Garcia.
Chill, Ter Stegen, chill.
I think we can close the goalkeeper position, and I think that the topic, and I think it's good. In my opinion, I think we can both agree that it's good. I think Joan Garcia makes sense. So, the other one I wanted to ask you is potentially now, Barcelona and you can say that they're the favorites to sign Nico Williams.
Yeah, dude, that one's gonna be interesting because, Barcelona were first trying to go for Luis Diaz, right?
Yeah.
That was their main target, apparently, according to Deco.
I think it was because of the ego.
Yeah,
Deco's ego came in a way.
Yeah, of course. They, Barcelona were a little upset about her because.
But didn't they do the same thing with Griezmann?
Same thing, bro. So so Nico Williams. Apparently, Nico Williams was like fifth. So I think they had Luis Diaz first.
Rafael Leao too. That's why I heard.
Rafael Leao was third, but Rashford was second. And I don't even know who was fourth, but apparently Nico Williams was like in the top 5 wingers that they were going to try to go for this summer. So and I am kind of glad that Nico Williams took that step, forward, and he. You can kind of tell that Nico Williams in that aspect, he's willing to kind of suck up his pride a little bit because he didn't say, okay, well, if they want me, they'll come knocking, they'll talk to me.
He's trying to make it happen more than he was last season.
Yes.
So do you know why last season he didn't try that? Do you know why as much?
It's because I think he had promised his brother and his mom, right, that he was gonna stay one more season at Bilbao, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so that's part of the reason why. But the reason why is because they had qualified for the Europa League. So he had promised his brother and his mother that
he was gonna
stay to compete in European competition.
For Bilbao, but you cannot really.
No, it's okay, bro. I understand. I'm like, I think that, let's say, you're playing with your brother and stuff at a top level, same club. You're gonna want to, play with them, or at a, European competition like the
most
Europa
you
League.
can,
Yeah,
as long as you can, of course. And then, so I think it took a lot from Nico Williams to be like, you know what. Because apparently he had met with Arsenal and he had met with Bayern Munich.
Yeah, Bayern Munich too. Yeah.
And then I think he was asking for like 20 million a season from both Bayern and Arsenal. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Bayern were willing to give him that.
Right.
But then he told his agent to just to stop there and to go to Barcelona, to reach out to Barca, which his agent did. But it kind of takes a lot, bro, because he kind of sucked up his pride and he was like, hey, like, I want to play for Barca. That's how you can tell that he wants to play for Barca. So I think that's good because you're potentially going to get a player that really wants to play for Barca. Not that Luis Diaz didn't want to.
No, yeah, Luis Diaz is a huge fan of Barcelona too, but I think that when
that
you're
extra step, because Luis Diaz hasn't taken that step either. Luis Diaz is kind of just waiting to see what Barca do, whereas Nico Williams took the first step and was initiative. Took that initiative to be like, hey, I want to go play for Barcelona. I want to go to your club. If you guys are interested in me, then I'm willing to. And he accepted terms with Barca already.
I heard that he
So
accepted.
he accepted 6-7 million net, which is like 10 million gross, I think, 10 to 12 million gross, which is lower than what Bayern Munich were willing to give him, or what Arsenal were probably going to give him. So that kind of tells you that he wants to play at Barcelona, and it makes sense, bro, because he's a good friends with Lamine Yamal, with Pedri, with Olmo, right, with Fermin, Gavi.
You have Eddie
Garcia,
Garcia.
So he's Valde too.
You have pretty much, bro. You know what? This is kind of reminding me of the 2010 Spain squad, where most of the squad was filled with Barcelona players.
Yeah, it's pretty. It is, bro.
You
really
had
think about it.
You had Iniesta, Xavi, Piqué, Puyol, Busquets, yeah, and then the right back. I forgot who the right back was. Jesus Navas, right? If I'm not mistaken.
By 2010, no, I think it was Sergio Ramos, bro.
Oh yeah, Sergio Ramos, Piqué, Puyol, and then Capdevila played
yeah.
And then you had Xavi, Iniesta, Fabregas in the bench.
Fabregas was. And that's I think it's crazy because that's the year that after they won the World Cup, that Fabregas went to Barcelona.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they put that jersey on.
And you have Pedro too.
And you have Pedro, yeah.
Pedro Gonzalez too. So, it's kind of reminding me of that. Potentially, in 2026, you can potentially see a Spain squad actually being filled with Barcelona players because, I mean, let's just kind of go from here, right? You're probably going to have Carvajal. You're going to have, I think, in my opinion, Hoysen or Asensio from one option. And then I think you're going to have Kubarsi.
Kubarsi needs to play, bro. I don't know why the Spain coach didn't play Kubarsi.
I think he was probably trying to create more competition, which is fine. But then, like you have Balde, and then you have Pedri, you have potentially Olmo, Gavi, you have Subimendi, of course, Rodri, you can't forget about those. So I'm just naming Barcelona players. Then you have Nico Williams, Lamine Yamal, and then wherever the number 9 is.
Ferran Torres.
Ferran Torres or Morata, I don't know. Or, Spain has... Ever since Spain played with Fernando Torres and all of them, they kind of did struggle with the number 9 position. But whatever, that's a whole different topic. I'm getting off track. But what I was going to say was, I think it's good for Nico Williams, and I think it's good for Barcelona because Nico Williams coming to Barcelona, bro, makes the most sense. Mm-hmm. And this is what I mean from, like, you look at everything, right? Price, wages. You look at the fact that he's already playing in Spain. Mm-hmm. He's Spanish. He has friends at Barcelona. And in my opinion, I think him and Lamine Yamal also want to play with each other. Mm-hmm. I think Lamine Yamal can go ahead and, pretty much do better having Nico Williams on the other side.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great signing in my opinion.
Yeah, not only that too, but you also can become Lamine Yamal dependent.
Right.
You only want to play on the wing. That's the only wing you want to play now because now you have Nico Williams on the other wing. So, it
kind of reminds me of, not in the same caliber, but it kind of reminds me of the options that Barcelona have with with Messi and
Neymar. Yes, we're not, the defenders, they don't only have to worry about Messi, they also have to worry about Neymar. So it could be the same thing. I'm not saying that, of course, Nico Williams is at the Neymar level.
No, of course, no.
I'm not saying that.
We're saying in a sense, the options.
The attacking options.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So, yeah, dude, and then like you said, it makes the most sense because of price, because of age. Luis Diaz, he's 28 years old.
28, yeah.
So, and then paying 85 million for a 28-year-old, it just doesn't make any sense.
No.
It doesn't make any sense because he's going to give you, 4, maybe 5 good years, potentially?
Yeah.
Right? And you'll probably get lucky if you get 5. Because that's, 33? So that's kind of old. And
for a winger, yeah.
They lose their speed and everything, which that's what they depend on, the wingers, right? Their speed and their pace. So, when Nico Williams, you have 10 years, bro.
10 years,
32. He's 22, no?
Yeah, he's 22.
21, 22. So you have 10 years, dude. So, yeah, Barca, which I think is gonna happen. Let's hope it happens. I think it is because Atletico Bilbao, I know for sure they're not gonna negotiate with Barca in terms of the payment.
I think there's just gonna be a release clause.
So Barca are gonna have to come up with paying the release clause, and then I believe they also need to have some players leave.
Yeah.
So they can get back to the 1-to-1 rule.
So I think, for example, Lenglet is gonna leave. I think they're gonna obviously.
No, then Lenglet's gone already.
Yeah, Lenglet. He gave up his salary too, which is really nice.
Yeah, he did.
I think Ansu Fati, they're gonna loan him out. Mm-hmm. Deco said that they're not looking to sell Ansu Fati, they're looking to loan him out.
Which is good. I think that's good. Yeah.
He's only 23, bro.
Yeah, you never know. Maybe hopefully he stays injury free. You never know.
Yeah. So Ansu Fati is probably gonna be gone for the season, and I also think that they're gonna try to sell Christensen.
I don't think they should sell Christensen.
I think they need to sell a defender, though, bro. either Christensen or Rajo or Martinez, I'm choosing Christensen, to be honest, bro.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Eddie Garcia, he can play right back as Kundes. I like the way Eddie Garcia played right back.
He did, yeah. He actually covered Kunde pretty good. So if it was, it's so funny how things can change. Because if it wasn't because of that, we would have probably been talking about Eddie Garcia out. So it's crazy. But now we're like, no, he can cover the right back position. So yeah, I think maybe that's the reason why they want to get rid of Christensen. And then, potentially Ter Stegen, right? Ter Stegen is a big one. Yeah, but Ter Stegen is a big one because he earns a lot at Barca. Yeah. He's one of the highest paid players at Barca. So, I think, they would have got rid of Lewandowski would have been better, but that's fine.
Look, I mean, we both really want Julian Alvarez to the point where we wanted him last season. Actually, we both been wanting Julian Alvarez since the end of 2022 World Cup.
Yeah.
When he benched Arturo Martinez, me and him, me and Brian, we were talking. We were saying, like, hey,
kept saying that.
Julian Alvarez is the perfect number 9 based on how Barcelona historically has played with a 9. Very mobile. We've talked about that, right?
Because he gave us a glimpse of David Villa.
Yeah, David Villa. He even gives me a glimpse of how he could be like an Kun Agüero.
Yeah, that's true.
So, me and you have always agreed on that. Now, it didn't happen, right? And we also understand why it couldn't happen because, first things first, the deal with Lewandowski didn't make sense from the beginning, right? You had him at high wages. He's expensive in a sense. His wages are really up there,
I think if I'm not mistaken,
I think 40, right?
I think it's the highest. I think it's 30 or 35 before gross. So that's
right.
Like about
a season.
A season, yeah.
So
it's a lot.
Yeah, it's a lot, especially for a 37-year-old player.
Yeah.
But given the fact that they signed Nico Williams, and I also think that next year, I think they're going to go for Julian Alvarez because I also think that Atletico de Madrid they were not going to bargain for Julian Alvarez sale this season.
150 minimum.
I think 150 minimum, So I think that next season it gives Barcelona more of a leverage to be like, hey, okay, Atletico de Madrid. Because let's not forget, right? A lot of things can change for Julian Alvarez himself as a player. If he's not winning anything at Atletico de Madrid, he could be like, hey, you know what?
You become frustrated.
Hey, you know what, guys? I want to leave. Let me leave. Let me go to Barcelona. And so I think that all those can kind of start, coming together.
Yeah.
And so I think that next season you can potentially say Julian Alvarez should be the number 1 target for Barcelona. And honestly, bro, I think that's pretty much all you need. Because you have Gerard Martin as a cover for Valde. You have Koundé being covered by Eddie Garcia. You have Araujo, you have Martinez, and you have Kubarsi playing a defense, right? And then even if one of them gets injured, you can probably have even Eddie Garcia step in as center back, right? And then you have the middles are stacked, bro. You have De Jong, you have Bernard who's coming back, you have Casado, we have Gavi, we have Pedri, we have Olmo, right?
Fermin.
We have Fermin, and then we also have in the wingers Lamine Yamal, Nico Williams, Rafinha, and then you have your Ferran Torres or even Olmo who can play the striker position to be the cover of Lewandowski. In my opinion, bro, I think it's good, and I've always said that a top club has always needed squad depth, and I think this is what Barcelona is creating again. You remember when Pep Guardiola was coaching Barcelona, he had huge squad depth, bro. For a season or two, he has huge squad depth, and I think that's what we need.
You need that, bro. You need competition because if not, the players start becoming complacent. I think that's what happened to Barca too when they had Jordi Alba, they had Piqué. They had Suarez. Messi was Messi, so I think Messi was the only one that could have got away with it, not having any competition, because who was really going to compete with him anyways. But the other players, nah, bro, like Piqué, Jordi Alba, even Busquets to a certain extent as well, and Suarez, nah, but there was no competition, zero competition for them. Their spots were guaranteed, and they were on high wages.
Yeah.
So, you cannot have something like that, bro. You need to go ahead and have competition, for a big club like Barca, because if not, then you get players like right now with Ter Stegen, right, where they start becoming, entitled to a certain extent, but they think that spot is theirs, period, and there should be no player that should come in and dispute that. That's not the case. That's not the case. So yeah, and another thing too is that, another option that Barca could do is, I'm not sure if maybe Hans Flick, I'm not telling Hans Flick what to do, I'm not a coach, but why not play Rafinha as a false 9 too? Look at Dembele, how he's been
I think that's a whole different video, bro, but we can say that because, in my opinion, bro, I think Lamine Yamal needs to start stepping up to that 10 position.
But we should make a video about
Actually, no. Let's do this. Let's do this.
Yamal
Give
getting
me,
number 10.
give me your starting 11 right now. If let's say Nico Williams comes to Barcelona, what's your starting 11? And I'll give you mine after, just real quick, and that's how we can end the video.
Okay, yeah. So Joan Garcia, of course, who will be my starting goalkeeper. Right back Kunde. Center backs will be Inigo Martinez still. Depending on how he does this in the summer, no injuries. Inigo Martinez, Garcia, Alde.
Okay.
Pedri, De Jong.
Okay.
Based on how De Jong finished.
Right.
But you can also have Casado there. Let's see how Bernal does, right? That would be my two midfielders.
So you're playing with the same formation, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
4-2-3-1.
Uh-huh.
And then up front, I will have Lamine Yamal.
Where?
I will have him to the right,
Okay.
starting right there. And then I will have Rafinha in the middle, behind Lewandowski. And then I'll have Nico Williams. But I also would like to start seeing, if Lamine Yamal gets a number 10, I would like to see Lamine Yamal start transitioning to playing in that middle. That's a number 10. Perhaps maybe behind Lewandowski being the playmaker, and have Rafinha go to the right. And then who knows, maybe Rafinha and Nico Williams can kind of rotate throughout the game, depending on the options. Because Rafinha can also go to the left.
Right.
So that's how I will set up the team. Yeah. And then if Lewandowski is just not cutting it, and let's say Ferran Torres, of course he's not gonna cut it. Let's say Ferran Torres is not cutting it. Why not just go ahead and try? Yeah. Why not go ahead and go with the 4-3-3, right? You can try a 4-3-3, or let's say with the 4-2-3-1, right? You can have Dani Olmo play as a cam. You can have Rafinha to the right, Nico Williams, and then you can have Lamine Yamal, right, playing as basically the striker false 9. But I think maybe for that one, you're going to need a 4-3-3. So maybe you'll have another midfielder, either Casado, Bernal, or Dani Olmo, along with Pedri and De Jong. And then you have Lamine Yamal as your false 9, and then you have Rafinha, and you have Nico Williams. For the false 9, I think you will probably need the 4-3-3, I think. But who knows? Maybe Hansi Flick can make it happen with the 4-2-3-1.
I think my starting 11, I'm just going to keep it simple real quick, 4-2-3-1 like you. And I think this upcoming season, bro, I'm putting Lamine Yamal behind Lewandowski. I'm putting him right off the bat, bro. And I'm putting Rafinha as right winger. And I'm putting Nico Williams as left winger. Lewandowski, Lamine Yamal, Rafinha right winger, Nico left winger, Pedri, De Jong, CDMs, Balde, Garcia, Inigo, depending on how he comes back, Conde, Joan Garcia. I think that should be the Barcelona lineup.
I agree. You know what? And it's not. And it's also great because you can also have, for example, let's say throughout games or whatnot, you can have Lamine Yamal go from the middle to the right, and you can have Rafinha go to the middle too, because Rafinha can play there too. Right. So you have options, bro. When Nico Williams gives you options, that's the reason why it's important. I think a player like Nico Williams is important. I love Luis Diaz, but the thing about it is that doesn't make any sense because of his age and his price.
Yeah, like the whole, you can say looking at everything, it just becomes a forced signing. Yeah,
it doesn't really make any sense. But a player like Nico Williams gives you those options, to be able to have Lamine Yamal behind Lewandowski, and then you have Rafinha on the right. And let's say throughout the game, maybe it's tight, it's not working. Maybe Lamine Yamal is not having a great game. It happens. Rafinha can go to the middle.
You have huge rotation options, bro.
And honestly, Nico Williams, Rafinha, and Lamine Yamal can now rotate because Nico Williams can also play on the right wing. And then you can have Lamine Yamal go to the left. You can have Rafinha in the middle. You can have Rafinha go to the left. And you can have Lamine Yamal in the middle. The only one that cannot play through the middle will probably be Nico Williams. But you can have easily Rafinha or Lamine Yamal rotate through there. So
I think that's good, dude. So let's see what happens. But
that'll be a hell of an attacking, bro. Yeah. To be honest, if Nico Williams arrives,
I think that that's the reason why I'm excited, bro. And I think that we can potentially see Nico Williams coming in, and I think it'll be great. But I think that should be it, right? We covered everything. But you wanted to say something. So if Nico Williams arrives to Barcelona,
if Nico Williams arrives to Barcelona, Real Madrid don't need to get ready.
No,
Europe does not need to get ready.
No. Who needs to get ready, bro?
The whole continent, okay, including Africa, do not need to get ready. Okay, Russia do not need to get ready. The whole world needs to get ready.
So we're gonna get a treble next season, bro? Treble next season?
If Nico Williams arrives to Barcelona, if Nico Williams lands on Barcelona, the world ain't ready for this. They're not ready. I'm telling you guys. I'm telling you, lads. They're not ready.